Hello and welcome to another Pioneer video. If you're a fan of the format and want to see more Pioneer videos in the future, the best thing you can do is to watch the content all the way through and engage with it. But for now, we're finally revisiting Fight Rigging, one of my favorite cards, a 3-mana enchantment with Hideaway 5, and then at the beginning of combat we get a +1 counter on a creature we control. If we control a creature with power 7 or greater, we get to play the exiled card for free. And we've gotten a lot of high-powered creatures in recent sets that can help enable Fight Rigging, the most recent one being a Slumbering Trudge, X and a green for a 6/6 that maybe enters with a bunch of stun counters on it, but we don't really mind even if we cast it for X equals 0, as long as we get a 6/6 on the battlefield, which can then enable Fight Rigging, as well as some of our other high-powered payoffs, such as the Skullspore Nexus, which can activate to double a creature's power. If our creatures die, they get replaced by Fungus Dinosaur tokens. We've got the Great Henge, which we can also maybe play for just 3 mana if we control the Trudge, so a turn 3 Henge is pretty powerful, making additional mana, gaining life, and drawing additional cards going forward. And then of course Galta also gets a discount equal to the total power of creatures we control, so with 2 Trudges we can easily cast it for just double green. So these are some of our payoffs for controlling high-powered creatures, and then besides the Trudge we have 8 more enablers, with the Hammer Skull being one of them. A 6/6 dinosaur does have a bit of a drawback if it attacks. If we don't control another dinosaur, it will get a stun counter. And then a Bebop and a Rocksteady, a 7/5, so this one gets an even bigger discount on our Great Henge, which will now just be double green, and also very nice with Galta. Does have the drawback of forcing us to sacrifice a permanent or discard a card if it attacks or blocks, whereas the Hammer Skull only has a downside when it attacks. And of course we do have a few other dinosaurs throughout, besides additional Hammer Skulls. We also have Galta, and maybe the dinosaur tokens from the Nexus to help enable the Hammer Skull to attack. And then, if our opponent does have a few chump blockers to get in the way of all these high-powered creatures, we also have 2 copies of Garruk's Uprising, which can also function as an additional card draw engine, while also giving our creatures trample. And then to round out the deck, we have some early mana acceleration, so we can maybe play some of our 3-drops on turn 2 already. And then the Curator gives us a beefy creature, which could eventually get to 7 power for Fight Rigging, especially if we draw multiples, but it also gives us some much-needed graveyard hate in the format, especially in Best of 1. You do run into a lot of Greasefang decks, or decks that rely on having spells in the graveyard, so then having a bunch of main deck Curators is quite nice. And then we also have the full set of the Turntimber Symbiosis, which can be played as a land, but if we exile it with Fight Rigging, it can be a little bit more exciting than just hitting a creature, since we can now find a creature among the top 7 and even put some additional +1 counters on it if its mana value is 3 or less, so that just makes our Fight Rigging a little bit more consistent. And then the mana base has plenty of forests. Boseiju can give us some more interaction. Nykthos occasionally gives us a nice mana boost. That's also where having those Curators can help. And then 3 copies of Ba Sing Se can also be a very important tool against more controlling strategies to make sure we don't run out of threats. So we always have a creature we can put additional counters onto with our Fight Rigging. Now, one minor note is that I did want to include 2 copies of Life's Legacy, which is technically legal in Pioneer, but is not available on Arena. So that's a card that could maybe allow us to sacrifice the Trudge to draw 6 cards for just 2 mana. So that seemed like a pretty fun interaction, but without Life's Legacy, we'll still make it work. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play. We are missing some of our more exciting cards. Lots of mana acceleration into a Skullspore Nexus. It's reasonable, just not amazing. I'll try it. Turn 1 Pathway, so maybe Arachdos midrange. Thoughtseize can take Curator or Nexus. At least we're in a spot where we can top deck something powerful and immediately cast it. I'll just play out all the elves. It is Mardu colors. And a Kroxa makes me discard the Curator. Would have been pretty nice against Kroxa, exiling it before they can escape. And there's a Fight Rigging, so that's step 1. Find In this case, I'm kind of liking the Great Henge, since this seems like a grindy matchup. Although I wouldn't be able to enable the Great Henge to draw cards, even if I top deck one creature, since I won't have another one in hand. Well, if our opponent's a dedicated discard deck, we're already empty-handed at least. Fear of Missing Out is next. And discards Sky Sovereign. Alright, so it is a Mardu Greasefang deck. Well, we've got the Hammer Skull, so we can enable Fight Rigging. And get our Great Henge. No attacks. And then I'll make sure to gain 2 life end of turn. So now any creature is a good top deck. But if they have a Greasefang, we could be in trouble. And better try with the Hammer Skull, sure. Delirium is enabled. And the Harvester can double block the Fear, so don't think they'll be attacking with it. Letter Elves draws a card. And a Galta is a nice one. Counter on the Mystic. Do I attack with it? Next turn, Galta should present lethal. So, yeah, I think we're fine to chill. Opponent discarding Nahiri. Could have been an answer to an earlier Fight Rigging. Harvester the Lanor Elves, but Galta is still gonna cross the finish line. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. This hand has a lot of high-powered creatures, but no real payoff, no Great Henge, Galta or Fight Rigging, and we're also lacking mana acceleration. So this is a little too fair, I think. Okay, this one I can try. And then a single Trudge should suffice. So we can play a couple Mana Elves, and then the Trudge discounts the Nexus. Opponent blue-black. And the Wandering Minstrel. I see. Alright, still gonna stick to the plan here. Could have also waited to play the Trudge for X equals 3, so it doesn't pick up any stun counters. But we might find something useful in the meantime. So maybe our opponent's kind of a scape-shifty deck with Spelunking. And lots of unique lanes. Curator's not bad. So we can resolve the Nexus, play Curator, and attack. Hedgemaze enters untapped thanks to Spelunking. And Garruk's Uprising, so first we want to activate Nexus on Curator, and then we can play the Uprising, so we pick up a card right away. I guess we already had a Trudge, so I could have, I guess, played it first, but yeah, I would not have changed our sequencing. Curator hits for 6. Opponent jumps. And then we can still maybe exile a card on the way out. Lumra. Alright, so I'm gonna want to exile a land. And we do see scape shifts. So they only got 2 lands back. And another Minstrel. Okay, so this turn Trudge can finally attack. Can double its power with a Nexus. And then maybe Symbiosis second main. Although I guess if I cast a Symbiosis, I wouldn't be able to use Nexus. So, start by attacking. Opponent does trade. Possible they have another Lumra. So we now get a very large token, which draws off Uprising again, and we drew a Ghalta. So that was a nice sequence. Can still play a Trudge, or we can keep Curator available. Although, it's not like I can exile the lands that Lumra mills, since they get them back right away. So I guess we'll Trudge for 2. And we'll see what they can come up with. Another Lumra. But yeah, the Nexus with our 12-powered creatures represents a lot of damage. A Lotus Field can sacrifice 2 lanes, which they can maybe get back. Formidable Speaker. 4 mana remains. Gets a backup Lumra. And yeah, I guess with the Vestige they can still cast it. So that's pretty strong. And the port may be a way to return another Lumra to keep going. And then eventually their win condition would be a Thassa's Oracle, I suppose. But yeah, we had Graveyard Hate, but we were also just attacking for lethal this turn, thanks to the Nexus. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a reasonable hand, our payoff being Ghalta, for putting some large creatures into play. Turn 2 we can either Rocksteady or Curator plus Trudge. Against the red deck, I'm sort of liking Rocksteady. Soulscar Mage can shrink down our creatures, admittedly. And they're gonna Burst Lightning the Mystic. Still means they don't have any good attacks. And then I won't have any trouble playing Ghalta. So I can go Trudge into Ghalta here. And then we can maybe start getting aggressive. Getting rid of another Rocksteady. Could also sack the Trudge, to be fair. Kumano trigger Prowess. And the Lightning Strike goes face, but yeah, we can just block Soulscar Mage, and our opponent's dead on the way back. So yeah, this shows the power of the Trudge, enabling our stuff. Uprising also a nice draw if we needed some trample on Bebop and Rocksteady. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have a 2-lander with a couple elves, and then, yeah, Hammer Skull plus Fight Rigging, with Ghalta as another payoff. So now with double Fight Rigging, the Hammer Skull is the key piece we need to keep alive. And our opponent on a black control deck, so they will have answers. Karvak can maybe get back there, go for the throat. So, yeah, interesting spots. I think we Fight Rigging first. And then they might prioritize taking out elves. Demolition Field can hit Basing Say. Just need them to tap out and let us have an explosive turn with Fight Rigging. They hit the lanes, which counts as committing a crime, so they can go for the throat Elvish Mystic. But yeah, that leaves them tapped out, which is what I wanted. Now they might be able to remove all my creatures going forward, but we'll see here. Trudge isn't bad. Could also play another fight rigging first, since we have 3 enablers now. I think I still go Hammer Skull over another fight rigging here. And find Galta. The Curator could also matter against Karvek, since we can exile their graveyard, but for now I'll take a Galta. So they've got 2 more creatures they need to deal with. In this matchup I would really like to get a Great Henge going for additional card draw, although now Shieldred can also punish that. So it looks like another fight rigging to me. And then found our Great Henge. Perfect. So I kind of think we should pump the Hammer Skull, because our opponent might actually trade Shieldred for Galta. And then with a 9-powered creature plus a Great Henge, let's see, I guess we'll still be 1 mana short of casting Galta. So maybe I should pump the Trampler then. Cast Great Henge, attack. Opponent does indeed trade. And then I can still play a Trudge if I'd like. Doing it for x equals 0 also would have made sense in case we drew a Llanowar Elves. But yeah, now we're in a great spot. Opponent's at 2 life. So they can't afford to get anything back with Karvek. Alright, opponent's gonna try anyways and lose. I'll take it. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. This is a one-lander, so it's a little sketchy. Do get an extra look at a land on turn 2, 2 draw steps in fact, with 2 elves. So I think I give this a try. We do have the fight rigging and the 6 mana enablers. Shadow Spear from our opponents. So not sure what to make of it yet. Maybe an equipment deck. Boros would make sense. And a Steel Cutter. Did not draw the land unfortunately, so then Mystic it is. Our hand is pretty well set up once we deploy our high-powered creatures. Cloud can find another equipment. And get the Colossus Hammer, so that's always scary. Alright, so now what? I can go for Bebop and Rocksteady perhaps, which will then set up a 2 mana Great Henge on the following turn. And I can maybe take a hit from Colossus Hammer, but we'll see. Alright, Shelter by Ghosts is unfortunate. And a Seam Rip as well. It's a lot of interaction. Well, at least they don't seem to have a way to equip the hammer for free. Another Cloud, okay. Maybe getting another Steel Cutter. Not sure what else they would want at this point. Maybe a way to give flying. I guess Embercleave makes sense. Okay, so we got to untap. Now I can go for a Great Henge into Fight Rigging. Could also go Curator plus a Galta. I think I'm going Henge. Could also play an Elves and then still hope to draw land. If I don't, I can still play Curator. Yeah, I can buy that. Alright, so now Fight Rigging looks a little bit better. And find, I want to say Symbiosis over Trudge or Curator. Got our 7-powered creature, cast Symbiosis, and hit a Trudge anyway. Although at least it picked up some extra counters. Alright, so now it's okay if the Hammer Skull dies. Can still set up a 2-mana Galta. Sacred Foundry tapped, no attacks. I like to see that. So kick things off with a Galta. Find another Fight Rigging. See what we get. Another Hammer Skull, I want to say, over Nykthos or another Henge. Okay, so then can go ahead and attack. Although maybe Mystic first makes sense in case I draw Garruk's Uprising for trample. Now we can attack. And then where to put the counters, can maybe spread them out a bit. Since we have plenty of 7-powered creatures anyway. And there's Uprising for next turn then. Alright, so yeah, possible I still get combo killed if they can give their creature flying somehow. Otherwise I like my chances. And yeah, looks like we got there. Awesome. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw with a lot of Elves and a Hammer Skull, but no real payoff. So I'll take a mulligan. This is a bit better. I've got the Nexus. So can maybe bottom a land. Could regret it if Mystic gets answered. Intimidation Tactics can also take the artifact. Could take the Elvish Mystic, but then we can still go Trudge into Nexus. Although Nexus won't do much with the Trudge since it's still going to be stunned for a while. So it takes the Trudge. And Great Henge is pretty nice if we can get Bebop and Rocksteady in play next turn. Tithing Blade makes me sack the Mystic. Alright, so now I'm regretting bottoming that land. Against a removal-heavy deck, I may want to play the Uprising before playing our creature, so we at least draw a card. But yeah, opponent now gets to maybe take it away. At least they're not applying any meaningful pressure, so we have time to draw out of it. Yep, that's awkward. And Waste Not makes sense, so it is a dedicated discard deck. So, what's our best draw here? Maybe another Trudge. Nexus can go. At least my mana base is all basics. Second Waste Not. Not very synergistic with Intimidation Tactics, since that exiles instead of discarding. So I'm hoping this draws a land so I can play Great Henge afterwards. Not quite. Another momentum breaker. Goodbye, Llanowar Elves. And a fight rigging. Well, we have options. Start with a Great Henge. And then I'm not hating the fight rigging, although Hammerskull also draws 2 cards. So that might be better. Now I guess Bebop doesn't want to discard anything to the double waste knot. So I could just sacrifice a land, but I kind of need them. Although we're close to presenting lethal here. Possible I don't need the Garruk's Uprising anymore. Although if they make some zombies, the trample would be useful. So possible I don't attack. Tithing Blade, sack Bebop and Rocksteady, since we'll have a dinosaur for the Hammerskull. Okay, so next up, could try Curator, and then play 2 mana Ghalta. Could also try to enable fight rigging, and then there's a good chance I'll be able to play Ghalta anyways. Alright, no dinosaur. So then I guess we'll go for Symbiosis. And then hope to find a dinosaur with it, so we don't get any stun counters. Alright, that's Ghalta. Draw 2 cards. Hit you for 8. And sure, we'll play a Trudge. Possible our opponent's got a board wipe, but we'll be able to recover. Well, the discard deck was not really able to capitalize on their early advantage. Tiny Bones says hi. And get to untap, and I imagine an all-out attack will do it. But can maybe trigger some more fight riggings here. And that'll do it. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a decent hand. Got 2 lands, Llanowar Elves into fight rigging. Can set up fight rigging with Hammerskull, which in turn sets up our Great Henge. That's the plan at least. If they take out the elves, then we'll just play this tapped. Turn 1 mountain does point in that direction. Okay, so we will need another land, we got it. Still afraid of maybe a Soulscar Mage, which can shrink down my creature. Opponent taps out for Steel Cutter. Alright, so Hammerskull first maybe has a bit more upside, since especially if we find a Dinosaur of Hideaway, I'll be able to attack without stunning it. Either way, if they have a Soulscar Mage, if I play fight rigging first, they maybe know to keep up a burn spell. But no, opponent just plotting a Slick Shot. Now that is dangerous, because I do not have any reach creatures. So can represent a lot of damage out of nowhere. That being said, I get to play Great Henge plus fight rigging if I'd like, which looks decent. That way we'll get to draw a card if we hit a creature of fight rigging. And I could go for a Curator. Trudge would enter stunned. Nexus could also be exciting, just to set up kind of a one-hit KO. even though I don't get to draw off Great Henge. So then I'm not attacking. Can give a trample next turn. So I could go to 8 power of fight rigging, double it to 16. So it's not quite lethal. Opponent's got another cutter. They can enable both with a plotted slick shot. But at least we can block those tokens on the ground. Another Hammer Skull's decent too. So I think we still want to Uprising first. And get the trample. And then Hammer Skull would allow me to attack without stunning. Draw 2 cards. And then may as well play the Trudge. Draw 2 more. Could also attack first. Do we think we need an extra blocker? Because our opponent can threaten a lot of damage next turn, to be fair. With only 1 blocker, it's possible I die. But I think I gotta start attacking. That way we at least put them in range of lethal next turn with the Nexus. This is where having a fight spell for the slick shot would have been nice. I did consider running snow-covered lands plus Blizzard Brawl, but against some opponents your fight spells will be dead draws, and they don't necessarily help you set up initially. So yeah, we'll see. Double Steel Cutter is pretty scary. Does seem like they missed another land drop, so that will limit how many spells they can cast. With only 2 spells we might be okay. Ancestral Anger can still maybe draw into a land. Does not look like they found one. Kumano, that's fine. So they've got a lot of damage, but I don't think 19, never mind, they had a land all along. Oh, I'm pretty sure we're dead then. A Reckless Rage. Is that enough here? And did not go face at least. So yeah, looks like we actually survive at 1 life. Well, that's incredibly close. And I will certainly have lethal on the way back, even get to draw off the Uprising again. But yeah, if they had any other pump spell or burn spell, we certainly would have died. So incredibly thin margins. Alright, I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a hand that's kind of missing a 6-powered creature to enable fight rigging. Curator can eventually get there. On the draw, I think we'll give it a shot. We've got 12 exciting top decks. Between Trudge and then our 3-mana creatures. The rest can now take the fight rigging. Or maybe the Great Henge. So Golgari, not quite sure exactly how their deck looks like. Takes the fight rigging and draws Symbiosis. And another Duress. Could take the Symbiosis if they want to take away a land, but I imagine they go for the Henge. No, still goes for Symbiosis, and now we drew Bebop and Rocksteady. So if they can't immediately remove it, next turn we get a Henge. Thoughtseize, so they had a 3rd discard spell all along, which is why they didn't feel pressured into taking the Henge. But now we're maybe in a position to top deck another fight rigging. The graveyards also have multiple types for Curator. It does seem a little suspicious here. They might have removal for Bebop and just want me to discard a card first. So maybe we don't want to play into that. Yeah, I'm not sure if I should play Curator. Could be more impactful when I can immediately grow it, since we have Enchantment, Artifact, Sorcery, just missing Instant. Close call. Yeah, sure, we'll play Curator. And then I'll say no attacks for now. And yeah, they had an Abrupt Decay. So Curator can grow next turn. I see, so a mid-range deck with the Unholy Annex. So would not be shocked if they have more removal, but for now we can get a nice attack in. So instant, sorcery, artifacts, and enchantment. Probably should have gone for a creature here instead of the enchantment, in case our Curator gets destroyed and we draw another one. Probably just hit for 8. Could see a demon. The Professor, okay. Can destroy the Curator. But then they also lose the Professor. So if they don't have land 5 to make a demon, they could die. I guess never mind, our opponent's at 2, so we can just go face here. I'll take it. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. This hand has mana acceleration and then a lot of 6-powered creatures, but no real payoff for controlling those large creatures. Of course, Double Hammer Skull still applies a good bit of pressure, but it feels a bit clunky. We are on the draw, so we do get an extra look at maybe one of our payoffs. If the Mystic gets removed, I'll still need a 3rd land. So it's not ideal, but I'll give it a try. And don't love seeing Soulscar Mage, because that can also shrink down our creatures. If, let's say we want to set up a fight rigging. So this is likely running the lesson package as well. They got a Swift Spear. Alright, so now I'm leaning Hammer Skull as our best blocker. Might be easier for them to deal with a 5 toughness Rocksteady. And yeah, now they're gonna start going wide with the Cutter. So that's a problem unless we can give our team Trample. And they had a bounce spell as well. So now we're just getting out-prowessed. Fall to 9. I don't think I want to take 3 to play Llanowar Elves. So we'll just run it back. Alright, let's see if we're dead. Another Swift Spear. Into Soulscar. So my only hope is that they don't have any non-creature spells remaining. But they had a Burst Lightning left. So that should do it. GG's. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play with a very strange hand. We've got a full house of Bebops and Mystics. So we can play Mystic, maybe with a land, turn to Bebop and then Nexus, but these are legendary. Still need the land, so feels a bit clunky. Alright, this seems a bit better. So then, do I keep land number 3 or do I keep the second elf? Feels like land 3 is better if the elf gets removed. So I can play this no matter what. If we do draw like a Great Henge, it could benefit me to have the extra creature, I suppose. Our opponent a black-white. Could be a Greasefang deck, in which case we'll want our Curator. But yeah, we can already play Ghalta next turn. Stash Skeleton, so maybe our opponent porting the standard deck to Pioneer. Still like Ghalta, maybe hang on to Boseiju, in case they have a Sheltered by Ghosts we want to blow up. And then can discard the Symbiosis now. Pretty far from casting it. So we are presenting lethal. Let's see what our opponent can come up with. And yeah, they did indeed have a Sheltered by Ghosts, so Boseiju gets to shine now. So yeah, still attacking. And then we'll have a surprise dinosaur end of turn. Could have maybe kept the Mystic back in case they have another Sheltered by Ghosts, so I can still block the Menace creature. But even if they gain 4, they would still die. And nowhere to run the Mystic, sure. So yeah, currently this could have been a standard deck as well. The land is untapped, so they could technically have a second main Sheltered by Ghosts, but they do not, and there we go. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a functional hand. Need Trudge to enable fight rigging. Opponent's black-green with a Lanner Elves. Don't have that luxury ourselves. A Nest of Scarabs. Okay, maybe a -1 counter kind of infinite combo deck. I mean, I could Trudge now and then hope that they don't remove it and then fight rigging goes off. Yeah, I guess it has the highest upside. And Grave Researcher is next. And another Elves, alright. I'm intrigued. So we can fight rigging. Could also Great Henge into Curator. The Graveyard Hate seems relevant. Fight rigging might have a little bit more upside. Although if they remove the Trudge next turn, I might prefer having the extra mana from Henge available. So Researcher can start surveilling stuff into the graveyard. It needs 3 creatures to prepare itself. Okay, and now we get to have our fun. So, start with maybe an Elvish Mystic. And then I can still fight rigging into Ghalta, or Uprising into Ghalta, withdraw twice. And then next turn we can hit him with a double fight rigging. Confident that we can find another Curator if we need it. Opponent accepts the trade, since they probably can't beat the Graveyard Hate. So if they have a third Researcher, it will be active. But yeah, opponent's just too far behind, so I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. What do we think of this hand? So turn 1 I could play the Trudge. And then I'm not really doing anything on turn 2. Turn 3 Hammerskull sets up Ghalta. So not as exciting as maybe a turn 3 Great Henge or fight rigging. Could always top deck those. Yeah, I'll try it. So maybe I do actually start with Symbiosis and then can play Trudge for X = 1. So we have to deal with fewer stun counters. Well, I guess I would have lost a stun counter. So maybe I do actually go for a Curator now. Turn 3 Hammerskull. And then I could go Trudge plus Ghalta in the same turn if I really want. Opponent considers. So an Izzet deck. Not sure yet to which variety. There's a million of them out there. But the Graveyard Hate from Curator could matter. As we see Ledger Shredder, so it could be a Phoenix deck. Great Henge was a great draw. So if I had a Trudge in play, I could have cast it already. Now I think we go Hammerskull, and then next turn I get Great Henge plus maybe a Trudge. At least I didn't lose any life in the process. And Steel Cutter, of course. So our opponent can go wide, but that's where our big Tramplers come in handy. They might have a Reckless Rage to deal with a Curator. Or a Lightning Axe, discarding Consider. Take 2. Alright, so stick to the plan. And Great Henge into Trudge. X equals 0. Opponent does get to connive. Have to play Galta before we attack, so we don't get stunned. Even if it gives them a bit more info here. Because they might be willing to take 6, but now seeing a 13 power Trampler, they're probably more interested in jumping. No, opponent took it. So they maybe have a plan to deal with the Galta. Next turn we can also cast a Symbiosis. Alright, so no Phoenix in the graveyard. Could be a Treasure Cruise turn as well. Our opponent is seeing a lot of cards. Another opt. They did keep on top. And they seem pretty dead here, and yeah, Fight Rigging also would have been exciting to cast, but I'll take it. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play with a keepable hand. Mystic into Bebop, into Great Henge. That's the plan. So far so good. We'll have plenty of creatures to draw with. And a Badger Mole Cub, so opponent's also setting up a lot of mana. Galta was quite a draw. So Great Henge into Galta looks good. And then I guess I could have played the Elves first actually, since yeah, we would have had enough to play Galta afterwards. That's alright. Bebop can attack. And the Professor, so they might be trying to set up some infinite life gain combo. Has to go for Galta. And drew another one. Could also activate Ba Sing Se to guarantee take out the Professor. If they jump with the Cub, I guess we're not too upset. So now we can play 2 mana Galta. And then I could still activate Ba Sing Se if I'd like. Although the lands would be tapped, so would rather Trudge for 3. See what we draw, and then Bebop can attack. Will not be discarding Fight Rigging or Galta, maybe give up on the Elvish Mystic. And they let it go. Alright, so next turn we can set up a pretty lethal attack. And yeah, opponent scoops it up, I'll take it. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play with a fine hand. Elves into either Bebop or Hammerskull, can set up a Henge, and start drawing from there. Opponent says no with a Requiting Hex. So then they must also have the full set of Fatal Push. And now Thoughtseize probably takes the Henge. Alright, so maybe go for Hammerskull now that we drew a second, so it can actually attack without getting stunned. A Poet's Quill, okay, opponent's learning. And they grabbed the 5 mana Dissertation, makes sense. So we're facing some sort of control deck. Well, they better have more answers for the Hammerskulls. Ba Sing Se is also a nice threat in this type of matchup. Probably still prefer Bebop and Rocksteady. If they had removal, they should have removed the Hammer Skull before I attacked, so at least the second one would have gotten stunned. But it's possible they can remove both. Fair enough. Can still threaten 9 damage next turn. So they're not really in a position to tap out for the Dissertation. Witherbloom Apprentice. And a Symbiosis. So Ba Sing Se doesn't have the best attack, and Bebop could get in for 7. And then, yeah, take it from there, I guess. Could still potentially Earthbend and then sack the Earthbended land. And that's also a possibility, pretty far from casting the Symbiosis. Think I will just attack and then discard the Symbiosis. And then Earthbend. Possible that keeping the extra land was more relevant than the second Bebop and Rocksteady. But if they remove this, I may want to back up. And I could also make this a 4-4 next turn. Apprentice attacks. Take 3. And Nick those the draw. So assuming they drew removal for Bebop and Rocksteady, they're gonna wait for me to discard and then take it out. Then would I rather hit for 4, let them maybe gain 3, or keep this on defense? I think I would rather attack. Could also make another 2-2, which also has its value. Or we could wait to play another Bebop second main, so really a lot of options. Yeah, I guess I'll attack. Sacrifice a land. Opponent did indeed have another Bitter Triumph. And the Bloodchief's Thirst, so their deck is really just all removal. But they did not attack, which means they're now forced to chump. Now they can try and cast a Dissertation. So yeah, the game goes on. But this would leave them dead unless they drew a land into removal. And they did not, I'll take it. So yeah, we got to see this mono-green fight rigging deck in action. Of course, against some of the fine-tuned Izzet decks, we're usually gonna fall short, since they can just blitz us with prowess creatures or just go wide enough with steel cutters that it's difficult to keep up. But against some of the other kind of less competitive decks out there, it feels like we have a shot, and the deck is certainly capable of some very explosive starts, now with a Trudge giving you access to a turn 3 Great Henge that can still cast other stuff, so that's been pretty exciting. But yeah, for now, I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.